Hello and welcome to Nightline. I'm Brandon Wong. The top stories. Police permit needed for canvassing, says the Election Commission. And Huawei to reward employees with $286 million bonus. Good morning. A police permit is required for door-to-door campaigning in the Tanjung Pi by-election. The Election Commission EC, which issued the directive, said that this included walkabouts. In a statement on Tuesday, EC Chairman Dato' Azhar Harun said walkabouts were also considered a form of campaigning, and as such, their times and locations should be made clear for monitoring purposes. He said EC officials had met with the Pontian police chief to clarify and coordinate issues related to permits and campaigning rules, where walkabouts are concerned. It was decided that the police will ask candidates and parties involved in campaigning to abide by several conditions which have been set. The EC chief also said that campaign materials that are seditious and provocative and do not display the name and address of the printer will be removed. Flags that are flown or hung at the side of the road which pose a danger to the public or obstruct the vision of road users will also be taken down. Permits are also needed for vehicles fitted with flags and loudhailers which are moved from one location to another. Such vehicles need to switch off the loudhailers or any recordings of campaigns while traveling and can only play them when the vehicle has stopped at a suitable campaigning location. Such vehicles must also not obstruct traffic. Meanwhile, opposition lawmakers are considering a legal challenge against the Election Commission's new ruling that political campaigners for the Tanjung Pi parliamentary poll are required to obtain police permits for their walkabouts, including door-to-door visits. Its chief, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, said the new ruling seems to favour Pakatan Harapan and was unfair. He said the opposition would look at the legal aspect and challenge the ruling in court if the EC acted beyond the law. Datuk Sri Ismail also said the ruling would be an added burden on police who now have to issue permits for ceramah held at every location. Still on the Tanjung Pi by-election, there have been no official complaints of federal ministers making announcements or handing out allocations during the campaign period. Election Commission Deputy Chairman Azmi Sharum said any complaints should be brought to the relevant authorities as the EC's scope of power in this regard is limited.
Benda ni, because of course it depends on the court's decision. So if someone makes a report, okay, and then it goes to court, right, then the court will decide, adakah ini salah, is this corruption, right? And it's so many factors yang mesti dikira. For example, the intention to induce dan sebagainya. And all this has to be settled in a court of law. Kita sebagai SPR, kita tak boleh, sewenang-wenangnya mengatakan, oh ini betul, ini salah. Okay, so again, as we've said before, our advice is kalau you rasa benda tu tak betul, make a police report ataupun make a report to SPRM, and if it goes to court, the court will decide. And it is good if the court decides. Then kita pun, we have a guideline, what is right and what is wrong.
He was met by the media after reviewing the early voting process at the PERCAP building at the Pontian District Police Headquarters on Tuesday. The EC, according to Azmi, has dealt with 90 offences related to the Tanjung Pi parliamentary by-election campaign as of Tuesday morning. The offences include putting banners in the wrong place and failing to display the printer's name on the campaign material. He noted that police received 31 cases of misdemeanor reporting during the campaign for the by-election, while 3 complaints were reported to the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC. Meanwhile, the early voting for the Tanjung Pi parliamentary by-election was completed on Tuesday with an almost 100% turnout of the 280 early voters. The EC record showed that 91% of the early voters had cast their ballots at the 2 polling channels in the PERCAP building of the Pontian Police Headquarters as soon as they opened at 8 a.m. The polling channel for 21 voters in the Pekan Nana State constituency was closed at 1 p.m, while the polling channel for 259 voters in Kukup was closed at 5 p.m. The early voters for the Tanjung Pi by-election comprised 210 police officers and personnel in Kukup, 18 in Pekan Nanas, 38 serving outside the constituency and 14 others who have retired from the service. All the ballot boxes containing the ballots would be kept at the Pontian police station lockup before being taken to the vote tallying centre at the Dewan Jubli Intan Sultan Ibrahim for counting after the completion of the polling process on November the 16th. In the meantime, the government on Tuesday issued a warning for all parties involved in the Tanjung Pi by-election to follow the existing election rules and laws. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Datuk Liew Vui Keong, said this in Parliament when asked on the alleged breach of election rules in the Johor by-election.
Jadi proses untuk mendapatkan undi-undi ini tertakluk kepada peraturan yang sedia ada, asalkan jangan langgar peraturan yang terlebih. Itu maka pihak SPR sekiranya terdapat aduan-aduan yang telah pun diberikan ataupun diadukan kepada pihak SPR akan mengambil tindakan dan juga merekodkan aduan-aduan itu dan meraporkan kepada pihak polis untuk mengambilkan tindakan selanjutnya.
On another note, Datuk Liew said the government hopes to implement automatic voter registration and voting rights to eligible 18-year-olds by 2021. He said that the implementation by the EC would take some time, as it involves about 4 million Malaysians who have yet to register. Malaysia's laws on aviation needs to be amended and new legislation added to raise its standard back to U.S. Federation Aviation Administration FAA air safety rating of Category 1 from 2. In a media conference on Tuesday, the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, CAM, said the downgrade in rating is not a reflection of the safety of airlines, airports or air traffic control in Malaysia, but only of the governing body itself.
The first hurdle that we have to face and challenges that we face, not just us but other aviation regulators around the world, is the fact that we need to amend some of our laws or take legislative action in order to cure some of these issues. That's the first challenge that we have. We are constrained by laws. The second challenge is that our aviation regulations need to be updated.
In explaining the downgrade, Afzal gave examples of interpretations between CAM and the FAA, where the FAA can issue fines to airlines, but CAM does not have the authority to do so. Other legislation that will need to be added include laws to regulate unmanned flying drones. Only one airline is affected, AirAsia X, which flies to Honolulu in Hawaii from Japan. The AirAsia flights can still continue, but it cannot add more flights until the category is raised back to 1. As for airlines like MAS that does code sharing with US airlines, CAM is still seeking clarification on how it will affect them. The audit was done by the FAA in April this year, and CAM says it may take another year before the next review. Meanwhile, an analyst said the public should not worry about the downgrade of Malaysia's air safety ratings from Category 1 to Category 2 by the United States Federal Aviation Administration when flying on local airlines, as they are safe. Mohsin Aziz said the real effect, however, will be felt by those in the aerospace industry.
But in the future, there are reasons for country to not look into Malaysia as if we are a qualified aviation country. So people with pilot license here might not be able to find job outside of Malaysia. Same thing goes to the engineers, the technicians. Foreign airlines might be nervous of sending their aircraft to Malaysia for maintenance, repair and overhaul.
The Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia on Monday confirmed the drop in the category in a statement saying it was working on getting its Category 1 status reinstated in a review. Other countries that are in Category 2 include Thailand, Bangladesh, Ghana and Costa Rica. Anti-competitive practices such as cartels and monopolies must be dealt with to ensure a sustainable growth of the country's economy. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Wan Azizah Wan Ismail said such practices contributed to the distortion of market that was supposed to compete in a healthy and competitive manner. Speaking at the Fair Competition and Cost of Living Symposium in Putrajaya on Tuesday, Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Aziza said a fair competition would benefit small businesses and the people. She said fair competition would also help entrepreneurs to be more creative, efficient and viable, thus driving the growth of the nation's economy.
Contoh amalan perniagaan yang tidak mementingkan keadilan sosial adalah apabila mereka secara bersama menetapkan harga jualan lebih jauh melebihi kos pengeluaran untuk meraih keuntungan maksimum. Dalam keadaan ini, berlakunya amalan perniagaan atau perusahaan yang secara bersama bersetuju untuk bertindak secara tidak adil daripada menjalankan perniagaan secara bebas dan bersaing secara adil antara satu sama lain.
Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Aziza, who is also the National Cost of Living Action Council chairman, added that the anti-competitive practices could also lead to enterprises folding up their operations due to an inability to compete and eventually forced out of the market. She also stressed that a free and competitive market would attract more industry players into it, in line with the government's agenda to make Malaysia an attractive destination for investment. Petrol dealers are urged to come up with ideas and innovation on how best to keep fuel prices at competitive levels which will not burden the people. Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail, in making the call on Tuesday, also encouraged them to come forward as soon as possible before the ministry reached out to them.
Saya mulakan dengan melontar idea ini lebih bersifat satu galakan, satu syur, dengan alasan-alasan tadi. Tapi jika sekiranya pasif sambutannya, saya akan mulakan dengan engage mereka pula. Ya, kita bukan impose top down punya pendekatan, tak. Kita akan engage mereka dan kita akan terangkan faedah kalau sekiranya langkah ini dilaksanakan. Jadi kita akan tengok setiap hari pergi stesen minyak Shell ni harganya RM2.06. Pergi Petron harganya RM2.07. Okay? Pergi BP harganya RM2.04. Itu boleh berlaku kalau inovasi dan efisiensi ditingkatkan.
He was speaking to the media after a symposium on competitiveness and cost of living, which was closed by Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Aziza Wan Ismail. The government, he said, had played its part by giving petrol subsidies to reduce the people's burden. Datuk Sri Saifuddin added that there were about 3,500 petrol stations in the country so far, with 6 key players, instead of being monopolised by a single entity. On what would be the best percentage for petrol dealers to keep fuel prices low, he replied that players can compete after taking into account their cost and service quality. Pakatan Harapan has rubbished claims by AMNO leader that Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad had influenced the judiciary in Datuk Sri Najib Razak's SRC international trial. PKR President Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim said such baseless allegations should not be entertained unless AMNO could provide facts and evidence to support their claims.
Saya tidak mau campur selain menyatakan bahawa ada putusan hakim untuk minta Datuk Seri Najib bela diri. Jadi proses undang-undang itu masih berterusan. So I don't think we should entertain some allegations unless they can give some facts or incontrovertible evidence.
Speaking to the media at Parliament lobby, Datuk Sri Anwar also stressed that the country's legal process was conducted in a transparent and an independent manner and should be respected. On Monday, AMNO Supreme Council member Datuk Lokman Nur Adam said that if not for Tun Dr. Mahathir's meddling, Datuk Sri Najib would have been a free man. This comes after the High Court ordered the former Prime Minister to enter his defence on 7 charges in the SRC international trial involving the misappropriation of 42 million ringgit in SRC funds. Coming up, man pushes mother's body in wheelchair after stabbing her to death. Details right after this breather. Welcome back. In Pahang, a 64-year-old woman was stabbed to death by her own son, who is believed to be mentally unsound, at their home in Kuantan earlier on Tuesday. The suspect then pushed her body in a wheelchair outside the house for 50 meters after the incident. District Police Chief ACP Muhammad Nur Yusuf Ali said the victim, Safia Hamid, age 62, was stabbed in the neck with a kitchen knife by the 38-year-old man between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. in the living room of their house. Initial investigations found the victim was alone with the suspect during the incident. He then stabbed his younger sister in the back and her boyfriend on the arm when they stumbled upon the suspect and the deceased. Passers-by then overpowered the suspect and tied his arms and legs before calling the police. It was understood that the suspect, who is unemployed, has a record of psychiatric treatments. The body of the victim was taken to the Tengku Ampuan Afzan Hospital for post-mortem. The other two victims, 26-year-old Masita Mustafa and Muhammad Azizan Awang, aged 37, were also treated at the same hospital. The case is being investigated under the Penal Code for murder. Tigers' claws and fangs, as well as bottles of elephant semen, were among items seized by police and wildlife and national parks department officers in an integrated anti-poaching operation last weekend. The two-day operation covered the Labis Forest Reserve and Endau Rompin National Park in Johor, Gua Musang in Kelantan, and Ulu Muda Forest Reserve in Kedah. Bukit Aman Internal Security and Public Order Department Deputy Director Datuk Zainal Abidin Kasim said 8 men comprising 5 locals, 2 Indonesians and a Cambodian were detained throughout the operation. He added deer skins and wild orchids were also among the animal parts seized from the suspected poachers. Authorities also seized a chainsaw, machetes, an axe and 20 nylon snares used to trap wild animals. It was believed that the illicit items were for both local and international markets and estimated to be worth RM500,000.
Ada yang datang melalui saluran tertib lah katakan. Ada yang ceroboh masuk. Laluan detail itu semua akan dibuat siasatan lah kan. But kita dipahamkan juga ada local people, kan? Local people, I will not say it's orang asli ke apa, just a local people yang accommodate orang.
All suspects aged between 20 and 40 have been remanded for 7 days to facilitate investigation. Since the operation was launched on September the 3rd, a total of 47 suspected poachers have been arrested. In Pulau Pinang, a former city councillor was sentenced to 3 years jail and fined 7,000 ringgit by the Georgetown Magistrates Court on Tuesday after being convicted of molesting a college student 2 years ago. 52-year-old L. Prem Anand was found guilty of using criminal force under Section 354 of the Penal Code to outrage the modesty of a woman outside an entertainment outlet on July the 6th, 2017. Magistrate Jamalia Abdul Manap ordered the 3-year jail term to commence from the date he was charged. The magistrate also ordered Prem Anand to surrender his passport to the court and present himself to the nearest police station once a month, pending his appeal to the higher courts. In Malacca, a father of 5 has been remanded until Saturday after he was picked up in an anti-drug raid at Taman Dimensi in Alo Gajah last Saturday. State Police Chief Datuk Mat Kasim Karim said the suspect was detained with 400,000 ringgit worth of drugs believed to be shabu in his possession. Police believe that the man is not working alone and investigators are looking for more suspects in the case. Investigations are being carried out under the Dangerous Drugs Act 1952. The Selangor Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Enforcement Team raided an illegal storage facility in Klang, resulting in the seizure of 336 subsidized liquefied petroleum gas LPG cylinders valued at 135,900 ringgit. Its head of investigation, Samsul Nizam Khalil, said investigation found that the facility had been used to transfer subsidized LPG to industrial cylinders for sale at market price since 4 months ago. A 40-year-old man believed to be the owner of the premises was also hauled up for further investigation. Dozens killed after 2 trains collide in Bangladesh. Don't go away. The foreign segment. Huawei Technologies is paying its employees bonuses totaling more than $286 million as a reward for helping the world's largest telecom equipment maker counter US sanctions imposed by the Trump administration. Besides the shared bonus, Huawei will also double pay this month for almost all its 190,000 workers. According to Huawei, in an announcement, some 90,000 employees will share $286 million bonus, or about $3,900 each. A company spokesman said a larger bonus will likely go to research and development teams and those working to shift the company's supply chains away from the US. It is understood that Huawei will deposit the double salary into employees' bank accounts on November the 15th. This came after the privately held company last month reported a revenue of $86.8 billion for the 9 months ended September 30th and secured more than 60 commercial 5G network supply contracts despite restrictions on the company and its supply chain. And over in Bangladesh, 2 passenger trains collided, killing at least 16 people and injuring more than 50 others. According to local officials, the death toll could rise as some of the wounded were in critical condition. Authorities said the deadly collision between the Dhaka-bound and Chattogram-bound trains took place at around 3 a.m. local time. So far, only 16 bodies have been recovered as rescuers in Bangladesh were struggling to pull passengers from the mangled wreckage. It is understood that Bangladesh railway authorities have formed 2 separate probe bodies, while the district deputy commissioner formed another to investigate the deadly incident. In the meantime, President Abdul Hamid and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in separate messages, extended deep condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in the accident and prayed for the eternal peace of the victims. And over in Thailand, hundreds of people set afloat lanterns into the sky of Chiang Mai for the annual Loi Krathong festival, which takes place on the evening of the full moon on the 12th month in the traditional Thai calendar. Visuals of the celebration wraps up Nightline this time around. I'm Brandon Wong. Thank you for tuning in and take care.